everybody out on Facebook and wherever else we're publishing this by the time you watch it. I'm Steve Stott. I'm president of the Sherman Players, and I'm here with Robin Froh, my co-host, to present another Keep the Ghost Light On. Yes, Robin gave us a little chin wave there, so that's good. There we go. Something new every week. Once again, got a great set of guests, and Robin will introduce them all individually in a moment or two. Now, I usually start out with some news. Like last week, not a lot of big news this week. There was another trial of a vaccine which looks promising. So again, that's all building up and looking good for the future, but nothing immediate. I've heard nothing much in the way of news about productions or anything that goes live or anything that's getting closer to going live. I think as we're entering the dark nights of winter, that we may not hear too much until maybe into the new year. A little bit of news from the Sherman Players and the Sherman Playhouse. We have appointed 3 new board members, which is quite a big move. We've appointed them so that we are well suited for next year, the next season, and we're going to get ourselves all ramped up to try and bring out productions and do whatever we can to advance the arts in our area. So watch the Sherman Players webpage and the Sherman Playhouse Facebook page, and probably on these broadcasts I'll talk about it as well. But that was good news for us, so we're moving forward. Now, I won't go on for much longer. I'm going to hand over to Robin, who will introduce our guests. Let us know who we have and introduce our first guest.
Okay, we got a young crowd tonight, very beautiful people. And
thank you, Robin. I try.
I'm including myself in that too. I want to introduce first a gentleman that has been with us in the past. I'm not sure how many people were watching at that time. We were fledgling kind of going, but we had some great people. And John, I've known for a long time, since I think he was 10, young actor, and then just blossomed into a great talent in the television world, in the casting agent world. John, how are you?
Muting. I'm good. I'm really good.
Okay. John's broadcasting from his office in New York City, I believe.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
So, John, tell us a short bio of you for the people that may not know. I think there's a couple that don't know. And tell us, you had talked about what COVID might be doing over the summer when we saw you, and now what it is doing, and how it's affecting you. So go right ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I'm John. I've known Robin forever, and happy to do this. As far as news is concerned, we've been back at it for I want to say maybe like a month and a half now shooting. Protocols are in place in terms of standard of testing for everybody on set, and obviously social distancing and all that stuff as much as they can. And maybe you've seen in the news, there are a bunch of productions now that are back up and running and trying to do this. Occasionally shutting down for a few weeks if they get a couple of positive tests and actors and that sort of thing. So it is sometimes sort of start and stop. It has been, but at least for us, so far it's been all right. We've been able to sort of consistently be in production for a little while now. It is, for us, for our discipline in casting, it is certainly an adjustment because much similar to sort of what, of course, you lose in live theater. There's also a significant restriction for us in casting in that you're not across you know, a table from the actor and breathing the same air, and sort of able to work with them and have a sense of immediacy to the process and give notes and work material and that kind of thing. You know, all of that is sort of for the most part gone by the wayside, because, you know, in this sort of emergency setting, we're kind of relying upon the actors, especially the sort of veteran sort of journeyman crowd, you know, to just sort of you know, to just sort of make the best decisions they can on their own and self-tape. There isn't a whole lot that is kind of interactive about the casting process, you know, lately. And again, just because this is kind of triage, really. So, and there are certain, you know, scenarios where that becomes very difficult in terms of kids roles, or, you know, younger people just, you know, coming out of training programs you don't necessarily know as well. People who could really benefit from, you know, being there in the room with you, and you know, being able to actually go about the business of casting in the way that we all understand. So yeah, so I mean, that's certainly, you know, it's definitely been limiting. But yeah, we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other, I guess, as long as we can.
And are you still on the Good Wife?
Yeah, Good Fight. Good Fight.
Good Fight. Sorry.
Well, Good Wife was was on that from the beginning for about 7 years, and then now the spin-off on their streaming platform has been going for 4 years, or their 5th year. So that will start again probably January. But right now I'm working on a show called Prodigal Son, which is a Fox drama, like serial killer drama. And we're also working on Evil, which is another like supernatural drama on CBS. It's also from the creators of The Good Wife. And curiously, we're working on a show that is supposed to be entirely done in quarantine, like remotely, much like this. So that's called The Second Wave, also from those producers from The Kings who created The Good Wife. And that is a new show for Spectrum, for their sort of proprietary like streaming platform. So yeah.
Now, Prodigal Son, Michael Sheen.
Yeah, Michael Sheen. Yeah.
Did you land him, John? Are you taking credit for that?
No, actually, not in the least. In fact, well, we had already hired him on Good Fight, and he.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And so he actually booked Prodigal Son. It had nothing to do with us. It was actually kind of a pain because we needed to logistically share him as they were shooting. So no, it was just like just a happy accident. Yeah. So we did get him first on the Good Fight. So.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, so tell us, you guys are pretty much on schedule. You're off and on at times. I know we've been talking. You said, well, we got 3 cases today, and then we've got to move on from that. And so how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, it just depends, like on a case by case basis. What they do is what I guess we're all supposed to be doing, or governments are supposed to be doing, is they do contact tracing and cleaning and all that stuff whenever there's a positive, and you know, they just try to contain it as best they can. You know, usually there's a whole protocol in place in terms of, you know, how close everyone is to set, how close everyone is to cast. It's sort of you know, I mean, everything is a sort of a skeleton crew. It's, you know, an abundance of caution in terms of who is actually in the room. So there are, you know, zones where it's really just people in an office off site who never walk on the stage, and then obviously there are people who, you know, need to be standing there on set. So so it's like various you know, levels of exposure, and they try to sort of contain things that way. But yeah, I mean, we get periodic positives.
Have you ever have you heard of, and you don't have to mention names or shows, of anything, you know, really suffering from this, having to shut down, friends that are out of work or anything like that? Not to bring the whole thing down, but we like to hear both sides, the hope and the despair.
I mean, yeah, well, so like For Life is a show on ABC that was one of the first out of the gate, and went down a couple of weeks later. So that definitely happens. I don't know, you know, anyone personally. I mean, yeah, of course we know, you know, sort of people in the community who, you know, who had terrible bouts of COVID, or their loved ones did, or something. You know, there's a ton of those stories, like especially in the Broadway community. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's yeah, it's I think just like the rest of the country, you know, I think everybody kind of knows somebody who's touched by it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve, you got anything for John?
Yeah, I was just thinking, the have you been in the position where you've had to rush to recast to fill a role where someone's had to drop out for for COVID reasons, or does everything, is the casting such that everything stops and move on to something else until they're back?
Yeah, in fact, if something like that were to happen, and they would just, I think we would keep shooting, but they would just somehow try to punt those scenes and punt that material for later, because so part of the sort of the protocols in place to try to, you know, make all this work as best it can is that we're actually doing a ton of work in advance that we never did. And it's actually not really possible to throw another body in. And that used to be, that used to be the great joke in terms of show business is, you know, you get the call, like, are you ready to show up at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning? You know? But now you just can't do it because of,
when you
say, like, for instance, like you need a negative test 72 hours prior and stuff like that. So we actually wind up working much further in advance, and also things take longer.
So when you say in advance, what types of things are you doing in advance to get ahead of things?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're right now we're working on scripts that won't shoot until like the middle of January. It really is like that, and it never used to be. And that sort of all sort of flowed from the writer's prerogative, because, you know, that's, if anyone's ever tried to write anything, it's, you know, yeah, procrastination is central to the art. But we've so obviously everybody's had to adjust, and so we have scripts ahead of time that we never used to have.
And I mean, at some point, when production kicks in again, does that mean you're ready to go, or you know, is it simply that you'll have a stockpile and start working normally again?
No, yeah, I think it really, in that way, it operates the same way. And if anything, it's actually a little bit, it might be the only silver lining to all of this, is that it's a little bit saner than, you know, it's a little bit more sober
Yes.
than the process was before. So, at least in terms, because episodic television, you know, film is different. Film is, you know, you sit around for months waiting for something to happen. But, you know, with episodic TV, it was always sort of laughably last minute and
Yep.
kind of thing. And so all of that's kind of fallen by the wayside, which I think is actually kind of good. But no, it's just you know, we're shooting every day. They're still, you know, they shoot on location. They're still doing that. There was a lot of talk about just shooting on the stages, but they have found ways to, you know, so far shoot on location too. And obviously this stuff has little to do with our prerogative and much more to do with what you know, Governor Cuomo and Mayor Blasio want to do. Yeah. So you know, so really ultimately we're at their mercy.
Well, yes, I guess you're reacting to you know, to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah,
you're impacted.
Yeah, but the good news is I think it's, you know, it's full steam ahead, you know, for as long as we can.
Good.
And I actually think I've been probably surprised by how little apprehension there is. It's not that of course that exists, but I think especially actors are just like looking to get back to work. Everyone's trying to sort of like create some semblance of normalcy, you know, obviously being as careful as humanly possible. But yeah, I've actually been kind of heartened by that I think everyone's kind of trying to put one foot in front of the other.
No, but that's good to hear. It seems, and I don't know whether this is because of long lead times or not, but there still does seem to be quite an amount of fresh TV being generated, or at least premiering. You know, I know Grey's Anatomy kicked back in again.
Yeah.
I think this last week, The Mandalorian. There's various seasons of shows which seem not to have been affected.
So it's
from the outside anyway.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. So actually, in many cases, you know, there was like, you know, 9/10 of a season that had already been shot, let's say, prior to March 13th, you know, and then it, you know, maybe they went a lot of movies did this too, and a lot of seasons of television. They went back maybe in September or something like that and just finished up, you know, for a few weeks under obviously, you know, tight protocol. But so that's one example, is if you were almost done. And in fact, in the last season of Prodigal Son, we never should have had a real first season. Like we should have been completely, you know, disrupted by COVID. But because because of Michael Sheen's schedule, actually, they had to shoot Sheen. But for whatever reason, we wound up shooting the last 2 episodes first, and then the second to last. In other words, we did like 22 and 21 before 19 and 20. So we just so happened to already have a season finale. So that was just sort of dumb luck.
Yeah.
So that happens too, I'm sure. And then the other thing you see, like with Grays, is that, yeah, you know, they went back in September, and so now you're finally getting to that turnaround place where you can put them on the air if you really hurry things along. So yeah, it's a combination of things, and you can kind of tell that from the shows too, you know, because I think most of the shows that have only been sort of shooting recently sort of certainly have COVID on their mind.
Yes.
In a way that, you know, in a way that the others don't. So.
Yeah, so no large crowd scenes or people leaning over each other, breathing on each other.
Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah. So, well, thank you, John.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. So this, as we say, slide along the coach, and Robin will introduce our next guest.
All right, cool. So I'm going to make a nice little segue here with Brianna. Brianna, I directed a version of Hamlet that took place in the 1980s, and Brianna played a flower child, older Guinevere mother to John's goth Hamlet, and I thought it worked. It worked very well for those two. Some others were not as well, but anyway. But Brianna, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well here in DC. You know, trying to keep occupied after, unfortunately, COVID took out my current show.
Oh, okay. So why don't you give us a little bio of you? I know we had you on for Say Goodnight, Stacy, doing a monologue, which I really appreciate you doing. This was in the throes of the early stages of things, and I talked to you a little bit, but tell us a little bit about your bio. How'd you end up in DC, and, you know, leading up to this pandemic and how it's affected you?
Yeah, sure. So I am an actor, writer, and producer living down here in DC. I wound up in DC because my day job is a consultant. I work in healthcare, mostly government healthcare. So naturally, kind of all roads lead to DC within that field. And then in terms of kind of where you last saw me, my company had closed. So I guess to backtrack even a little bit further, I was fortunate enough to be cast in this amazing repertory production of all of Shakespeare's history. So we were going to be the first American theater company to go do Richard II all the way through Richard III. There were only 20, I think it was 20 exactly actors who were in this show. And it was just going to be fast and furious, culminating in us performing a marathon weekend, doing all these shows in 3 days. And again, no other American theater company had done it. And so we were excited to be the first. It was years and years of work in terms of like casting and the setup for the production. And then for all of us, the audition process was like, it was over a year, actually, just rounds and rounds and narrowing down. And we started working together. It was an amazing collaborative environment. And we got Richard II up, we got Henry IV Part 1 and 2 up, and then COVID caught up to us during Tech Week of Henry V. Our opening night of Henry V was also our closing night of Henry V.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was sad for me because that was personally my big show, because I was doing Pido and Montjoie, and then it was like it was singing, fighting. It was just an all, like, the show was amazing. Very few people got to see it. And we were holding out hope that for our second rep, the Henry VIs, and then leading into Richard III, that we would be able to remount. And we were in a pretty fortunate place just because we had our own space. So as long as COVID needed us to, we could kind of keep kicking the can down the road. And so we did for quite a while. And then we found out that where we had our space, they're selling it, which was the nail in the coffin for our show, unfortunately.
What's the name of the company?
Brave Spirits Theater.
Okay. And you guys were the first American to do the histories.
Yep, we were going to be, all in rep.
Which is basically the War of the Roses, right? Most of that? Yeah.
You got it.
Okay. And so what was the space that you were using?
So it was a lab theater that we were using. It was set up with seats on 3 sides, kind of a U shape. The stage was completely flat, and it truly was just the space that we could do anything to. We had this amazing set design where the idea is that, you know, Richard II starts and everything is very structured. And as the plays go on, things kind of start collapsing and decaying to the point where we were going to have Richard III with basically no set. There was going to be no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a really cool concept.
That's great. Well, it sounds great. Are you remounting plans at all, or?
So right now, the theater company, we're trying to figure out, a lot of the grants that we had were earmarked for this specific type of production. So some of those funds had to go back naturally. And we're trying to find a way forward. We're thinking about perhaps trying to do some sort of video of the shows that would have been. There's also talk about doing a radio version of it. Unfortunately, in Alexandria, which is right outside of DC, we have access to a sound studio. So we could easily do that. It's just a matter of working with Alexandria, trying to figure out their COVID protocols. And more importantly, I mean, what the cast is comfortable with, because if we can't do it safely, it's not worth doing at all.
So over the summer, in the fall, have you done any theater?
Yes, actually quite a bit. I closed a performance of Spanish Tragedy. That was on Halloween night. That was with Sweet Tea Shakespeare, and they're based out of Asheville, North Carolina. So of course it was all virtual, which was pretty cool because I was collaborating with artists all across the country who were doing this one show. I've also been doing a lot of Zoom readings with the same Shakespeare companies. We do informal performances. There have been a lot of play readings, a lot of playwriting contests around here where they need actors to step in. The theater company that I'm actually on the board for, we just finished a playwriting contest and we're going to be mounting those coming up. So I'm helping to organize those.
And what's the name of the play company that you're on the board of?
Dominion Stage.
Dominion Stage. We always want to give a shout out because you know, we're based up here in Connecticut, but we do know we have viewers from all over the place. So we want to make sure we give a shout out to people who are making sort of performance available still. In whatever way we can. Now these sort of Zoom and virtual performances, and again, don't name names, but how do you feel the quality, not of the performance, but of the presentation and the, you know, the format has been? Do you feel that you've been able to reach the levels that you would like to reach, or do you think we've still got a way to go?
So at the beginning, I think everyone was trying to figure it out. And I think for a lot of us, it was a little bit overwhelming because we spent our entire workday doing this, and then we go to theater and then we're doing this again.
Yes.
And it was, you know, but people have really gotten into the swing of it and they're pulling out some beautiful performances. I mean, at the end of the day, you have a whole bunch of actors who are looking for an artistic outlet and there is nothing else. I mean, Zoom is basically the only show in town.
Yeah.
So I've seen some incredible performances. I mean, one of my friends, Ian Blackwell, he was doing an amazing performance of Geronimo in Spanish Tragedy. And oh my God, the tears that were coming down his face, the way he was connecting. It was a haunting performance. I've seen some amazing performances on Zoom.
And are these performances available online for general viewing?
They are. I believe Sweet Tea Shakespeare has all of their stuff up online. You can look them up on Facebook. Brave Spirits Theater, we have all of our performances. They're up not only on Facebook, I think they're up on YouTube, and Dominion Stage has theirs recorded as well. They're also on Facebook.
Oh, that's good. Again, we want to let people know that there are things out there for them to consume, and as we found, and I mentioned this sometimes. Robin, I think, definitely has found this, that you know, the reach. There's a potential for a wider reach now in this situation, just because of the way it is. So, you know, the more people see this stuff, the more normal it can get, and maybe a little bit more advanced technically it can get as well.
Yeah, I have a question, if you don't mind. Brianna, still there?
Oh, I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I get very neurotic about that stuff. Anyways, when I'm gonna try to formulate this question. Do you have, like, say, let's just talk about the Spanish tragedy. Would you have people that were, let's say, reviewing it, or people that would want to, you know, make a review of it, put it online, make comments on it? Did that happen with at least that show?
So I don't think that anyone formally reviewed that show. At least with my experience, I haven't seen any reviews of Zoom performances. That being said, the DC theater scene is starting to do some pretty exciting new things with theater. For example, we've had drive-through theater, which actually worked out for one of my friends very successfully. Things like that are starting to get reviewed, but not so much Zoom performances.
That's great, because we have a local reviewer, the Waterbury Republican. You remember Connecticut, and I sent a Zoom show that the Playhouse produced, that I wrote, to her, and she loved it. And I thought she's a very theater-based person. She misses it so badly because she hasn't gone anywhere, you know, and she loved it. But I think what it is that was an original piece, and it was only 35 minutes, you know. So you can sit for 35 minutes and appreciate something. I think the longer ones are a little harder, but it's great. Spanish Tragedy did so well. But I think there's some new stuff out there that really can be looked at, that can be looked at on a Zoom basis, you know, this virtual basis, and then hopefully they can mount it, you know, when theater comes back, basically. I don't know if you've recognized that or.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of theater coming back, I mean, we're definitely starting to see it here in DC. For example, Shakespeare Theater Company, they are opening a production of Blindness December 5th, and that is a light and sound installation based on the book, Blindness. And it'll be 40 people in a room socially distanced that will be experiencing this 70-minute performance. You've got Gala Theater, they're farther up in DC, and they're doing performances that they're filming and then putting out. I mean, it's really interesting to see, but I think what's, you know, really resonated with me the most as we've been going through this are the different opportunities for audience connection. For example, we did the Spanish Tragedy, and on the side, we had our dramaturg for that production going through writing really interesting things like, oh, you might not have been aware, but when this character says X, Y, and Z, they're actually referring to this obscure thing. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. And I think Robin and I were probably thinking the same thing. You know, there are so many plays out there that are perhaps a little obscure, or you know, you'll come, you'll enjoy them, but you won't necessarily get the subtext. You won't get the reasoning. And I think of Shakespeare. We put on Taming of the Shrew a couple of years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, and we actually used the not the Spark Notes, the Cliff Notes. I can't remember but one of the books that has the script and then some description. And you know, I'm not particularly well versed in Shakespeare, but the explanations of what these words meant, why if you say thou rather than you know what that actually means. You know
versus informal, yeah.
how much of an insult that is, or how much of a social play. Little things like that made a huge difference. So I can imagine that there may well be an appetite. There may well be an appetite for this kind of thing that people want
Brianna,
to understand.
How does that work with a dramaturge? Are you able to list or look at what she's writing or things like that?
So as a performer, I had a different view of everything than the audience did. But what the audience saw was the performance squares, kind of like what everyone is seeing now with us. But then on the side, there was a chat, and the dramaturg was actively typing in the chat. So everyone who was a part of the Zoom meeting could see the chat, the notes that the dramaturg was providing. But it also provided this great outlet for the audience to interact with each other and just share, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this just happened, or it was really cool to see.
Yeah, and I keep forgetting that Zoom has chat. Obviously, that's how it would be done. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it sounds like it could potentially be the equivalent of the little old ladies in the first row shouting, "Oh, it's him again! I love him! Oh, I saw him in such and such a thing." We even had someone in the audience. I think it was Shrew. We had someone in the audience who was reading, who had a script open. No, they had a script on their phone.
Oh, right.
And they because I came in through the audience. I played Romeo. And I came in through the audience for the opening of Act 2, berating the audience if anyone had a phone or was doing something they shouldn't do. And I stood behind this lady and just looked at what she was looking at. And she looked up at me and said, "I've got the notes, so I know what's going on." So there we go. That was lovely time.
Keep that on.
Yeah, no, that's a. That's something as Robbie says. I don't know that we'd have thought of that. No. I think it's got to be done in the right way. I get what Robin's saying. If you're watching a play and you want to be immersed in the play, to look away for the notes may be distracting, but as an entire experience, I think that's got a lot going for it.
And then you could rewatch it and look at the notes.
Exactly, and that I guess is maybe a drawback and an advantage of this, that theatre is immediate,
right?
TV, you watch. You binge watch, you watch it again, you watch whatever you watch, you rewind. Theatre is immediate, and there's a reason why that's a different experience. If theatre becomes TV, does it lose some of that immediacy? I don't know whether we can answer that here, but it's a good philosophical question for us to pose, and maybe Robin and I will talk about it for an hour over coffee sometime.
We will answer it.
We'll answer it. Oh yes, we answer a lot of things over coffee, so that's good. Thank you, Brianna. Don't go away. Stay there, shuffle along the couch. And Robin, over to you.
Yep. All right. This is the first time I've met Katie. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I got your name through Kent and his wife Tracy, and I believe you were doing some work with them over the summer, I believe. So this is great. Fresh faces are wonderful. So I'd like you to just go through your bio, try to keep it short. I know it's probably pretty long, and then how COVID has affected you. And what's interesting, that's sort of a two-part question: how it affected you when it came in March, and how it's affecting you, several months later. So go right ahead.
Right. Well, I was born on a Tuesday. No, I'm kidding.
All right, cool. We got time.
No, so I'm coming to you live from Albany, New York, where I've been living for the last year or so. I had all these big plans I was going to move to the city. I was like rocking, ready to go. And then I don't know if you guys heard, but some things switched around. But that's okay. I went to Russell Sage College, which is a women's college in Shore, New York, which is just like the city adjacent to, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Capital Region, probably familiar. Anyway, So yeah, then I graduated in 2018. And a lot of my work in the last few years has been in focus on like new play development, devised theater, devised methodology, site-specific theater on the one hand, and then on the other hand, pursuing like film and television and that kind of thing in the more traditional sense. Yeah, so I think what happened in March was I like Brianna, was ready to do like this really cool Shakespeare thing, and then COVID happened, and I didn't get to do that anymore. But you know, tale as old as time at this point, considering we're in like year 7 of this. So at first I think I just kind of had a tantrum, and like a small way, in the way that like builds character, of like. Where this was happening, everything was closing down. It was like those first few like really traumatic weeks where like things were really scary for everybody. And it was like, I was getting emails like 10 ways for actors to not be anxious right now. And, you know, come spend your money over here. And I almost felt like resentful at first of people's abilities to just like heedlessly snap in another direction, and on the one hand really admired it, and on the other it wasn't what happened to me. So yeah, when I came to meet Tracy, we were working on Row by Lisa Loomer. We were doing that with Wham Theater, which is a theater based in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And their whole ethos is art as activism, and all the proceeds from their projects go to like these funded, these like specific causes that benefit women and girls around the world. So we were doing this new play about Roe v. Wade, digitally trying to, you know, honestly just like throw spaghetti at the wall. in a way, but in a way that was still like really fun. And then Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And so it's funny. It's like, as like I'm hearing this discussion tonight about how much we're missing out of like the live aspect of things. And like, I really felt it that day. And I think Tracy did too, of like, this would have been a great day to be able to be in like the same room with other people and commune. And but on the other hand, the end result being that way more people were able to watch this digital production around the world than they would have been able to see it, even if every show had sold out. You know what I mean? All this money was raised for these causes. It was a very well-timed project, I think, after my little tantrum, to like feel good about working on a project that I could see was so much bigger than me. And like to really have like a tangible positive effect on a group of people who were in need.
I can understand that initial shock, and I think, you know, that was one of the reactions that Robin and I you know, were experiencing. You know, Robin was the president of the Sherman Players, sort of just as COVID was rising. I took over just after that. So we were both in the position of thinking, well, what does this mean? And Robin approached me shortly afterwards to say about keep the ghost light on. The notion being that we felt this would be something of a support group for people in the performing arts, because we're hearing these stories. We're hearing about people who were just starting up shows. We had a show that we did one weekend of and had to close down. You know, very sad that the cast had worked really hard up to it. It had gone out and it was a really good show, and then like the Marie Celeste in the dressing rooms after that. Everything was just left where it was. So Robin approached me, and we launched this kind of Performance Arts Anonymous to help people get over what we found was quite quickly, and this kind of mirrors what you were saying, that once you got over that shock, things started to happen.
Yeah.
Because it does appear that creative people can't stop creating. Is what we've been finding. You can't, it won't stop, and if there's an outlet, people will do that. But I absolutely understand the way you felt to start with, and also maybe some of that resentment for how can people be leaping on opportunities straight away, and how can people be wanting to make money out of what may be distress?
I think also what I was feeling too was that personally I thought like metaphorically speaking, like nature brought us all collectively to our knees. And in so many ways as a society we're coming to like these huge massive reckonings in our industries as well. We see white American theater, Broadway for racial justice, that kind of thing. There's these like huge, I just felt, I was like, wait, like slow down. And that was actually before like the summer of like the Black Lives Matter protests and of course like the killing of George Floyd, but they really like launched that initiative as well. So I think in the midst of like this like massive American tragedy, there's this interesting and kind of beautiful thing about how we're sort of forced to pause and reevaluate. And I feel very, I don't know, like, and very inspired by and hopeful for whatever like renaissance is about to come out of this time. You know what I mean?
Well, if you go back and watch the episodes of the shows that we've done recently, and certainly, last week's with Shellen and with Tracy and Kent. There's a lot of hope and tapping into that energy that you mentioned. That there was a swell of activism happening before COVID hit that felt inevitable, and then COVID hit, and you wonder where you are, what's going to happen next. But that energy is still there, and that energy has also pushed forward as well. That's what we've been finding, that gender bias in theatre and gender equality in theatre still a hot topic. Race in theatre still a hot topic. The Me Too movement, whilst you don't hear so much of that sort of hashtag, its effects are still rolling through. So I think the hope is that once the wheels start moving a little more consistently, that we should be in a better place with with all that activism that's been going on as well, that's still going on in the background. So I applaud you for being involved in that, and still caring when a lot of people would look inward and say poor me. People who are still involved in this kind of work, it's definitely to be applauded, absolutely to be applauded.
Yeah. So KD, are you looking towards the future for anything? You planning anything, booking anything?
So last night I ended up having like one of those 1 a.m. I had this great idea, so I have to go like journal about it, and like I'm all excited. That hasn't happened in a while, so that's fun. Beyond that, I don't know. I worked. I still technically work. I wasn't fired, but I was recently furloughed again from my job at the Albany Medical College, where I work as a standardized patient, which is basically like the Seinfeld episode.
Oh, yep.
But it is like kind of like empathy training with like student doctors, which has been really fulfilling. Kind of like the coolest actor day job you can have. I would not be a good waiter. I wouldn't be a good barista, but I can like tell you how to be nice to me, I guess. So I'm really looking forward to like getting back to that work as well. But unfortunately, that did just, our cases are really like on the rise in the city right now. So I have no idea other than like a brainchild of an idea that might be something someday, and just continuing to do what I can, continue to take classes online. I think something that we've also been getting at, and that I have really felt too, is I'm really excited about how us having to change tactics in a big way, you know, like things like self-tape auditions and that kind of thing, like that whole casting process going more and more online. Well, of course, you could never replace the benefits of being in person with another room or like breathing the same air, as John was saying. But I feel like the wave of like self-tapes and technology can actually make this industry like newly accessible to huge amounts of people who like across the country, who like maybe if they didn't live like in a major market, they didn't think like they could like get to an audition or something like that. Whereas now it again gives me hope of like an idea where like I can live anywhere and I can be an actor. And yeah, so I've been happy to have the time to like get good at that. Get good at like the self-tapes, the digital kind of relearning that you have to do.
Well, I mean, I have to say your setup though is great. The light is, you know, the light works really well. You're seeing it. Well done on that.
Thank you.
So I want to maybe open this up now to the wider group. One of the things we've really touched on, and I think it's been mentioned by everybody, and KD just brought it up then, is this notion of you can be anywhere now. You know, some of those geographical restrictions have been eliminated by the fact that, you know, you can't be together, and I want to try to understand that in terms of, you know, theatre and performance, and then with TV, and how much being there on set matters, and whether or not it's, you know, whether or not those restrictions have been broken down at all, sort of in the recorded, the TV world. So I'll throw that out. How are you finding the ability to be cast or to be involved in projects, you know, completely outside of your local area? Robin, you can kick us off on that, because you've experienced that from your training work and some of the stuff you've been doing.
Yeah, as I said, my Zoom training for private students has gone up, and of course it's, you know, I can train somebody from, you know, Michigan and on their time, and someone from New York on my time, and you can just add them all up, and you know, they have what is known as a Venmo account, which is amazing. So I like that account anyway. And so that is, you know, again, as Steve was saying, it's just so reachable. And you know, we just did this Zoom play that I wrote, and anybody around the world can see it, you know, that type of thing. It's amazing. And you can send it. I mean, this stuff you can send by an email, you can send by messenger, and entertain people, you know. And this program that we're doing now, we just started getting guests, because, you know, I keep friending them on Facebook, all their friends, and they're like, yeah, we'll do it. I was like, I don't expect them to say yes, you know. I expect them to be, you know, busy and like, you know, what are you talking about? And they're all interested. And I think that is part of the charitable feeling that they have, that they're trying to share their angst and their hope, you know, with us as well. But my point is, you know, we can get someone that's come from Poland, you know, and 6 hours ahead of time and set up a Zoom meeting with us. It's just fantastic stuff going on here. And if this, you know, when the Spanish flu, I don't know what they did. I guess they just kept going to school and kept going to theater, and it just happened that way, you know. But so yeah, it's got a lot of perks to it. But, and I always end with this, you know, I miss the boards, you know, I miss the wings and the lights and the people, you know, and it's very hard to collaborate. I don't know if John feels that way too, but it's just very hard to collaborate. You know, you are talking on the phone, you are talking like this, but you know, you don't have that connection. So pros and cons.
Yes, so to John, specifically to you, are you in a position where you're able to cast people who are not local, who can film, who can record their pieces elsewhere, to then be included in any of the shows you're involved in? Or have you heard of that as any kind of an approach, or is it really people have to show up?
Well, it really depends. So traditionally, if anything, we're kind of more limited now because you know, the shows aren't really like, you know, they're not really traveling people. We're trying not to import. We're trying to just sort of focus on the tri-state for reasons of, you know, I mean, well, once upon a time we were doing better than other parts of the country. So
yeah,
you know, that was like sort of the idea. And regardless, you know, everybody sort of has to be somewhat local to New York to you know, to show up on set. But the one exception to that, actually, curiously, was this other project that we're working on that was supposed to be done remotely. And in that case, you would think, yeah, right, from all over the country. But problem is, like, even in that case, you're sending out, their plan is to sort of send out kits with cameras and lights and everything.
right.
There's no way practically to sort of do that all over the country. And in fact, it would be disqualifying because the tax incentives for production are state-based.
Oh,
So
right.
That's actually part of the reason why.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the kind of thing that you don't think of there being organizational restrictions like that.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I think I would echo what Robin said. It is pros and cons. I'm sure it's different in terms of working with other regional theaters that are trying to sort of keep the lights on in one way or another, and that's pretty cool to be able to, you know, be available across the country essentially in some sort of Zoom production or that kind of thing. And I've seen that too in terms of like success on Zoom with school showcases and things like that, and it works, you know. I mean, you get a sense of the actors, you know. Showcases aren't great for that anyway, and so you know, you get a little bit from it, but it's not the same as like sitting in a darkened, you know, auditorium. You know, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
a new class of what have you, you know, NYU, Yale, etc. So yeah, I mean, it's not the same. And actually, I just wanted to try to answer this, and I wish I could credit. It's just like an aphorism, and I wish I could credit it. But in terms of how to distinguish between and I think this speaks to sort of what we're talking about, how the experience differs between film and TV and the stage is that what I've always been told is that you know, like when you take the example of a kiss. On screen, you tend to identify with the protagonist, right? And so you see yourself in that kiss, or you see yourself. Whereas on stage, you get jealous of the person who gets to kiss the, you know. So that's always been the way it was explained to me, and I think that actually there's a lot of truth to that. There's such a I don't know, there's something much more visceral, like so I think that that's something that will always be different, and will always be something that people will want to come back to.
We've certainly heard in previous weeks about how, you know, the technology to be able to perform,
yeah,
you know, the Zoom technology. This was sort of one of the questions I think to you, Brianna, earlier, was the you know, how you found the quality of the performance on you know, or the quality of the technology to present that performance, and what we've been hearing, and we had a technical special a couple of weeks ago, and that whole technical aspect of certainly with theatre, and work the same with any other live performance that needs to be broadcast, is the technical side of it is just as important as the actual performance side, from the point of view of making sure that it is covered properly and really brings people in. And it sounds as though strides are being made to try and get closer, but we're still a long way away from really experiencing theatre on a small screen, unfortunately. So Brianna, I was going to ask you a bit more about that, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to speak to, I mean, just because it's a Zoom performance, I would say doesn't mean it has to be a bad Zoom performance.
No.
And there are a lot of things that you can do, like for Spanish tragedy. I mean, there are scenes that take place at night in the dark, and we practiced our lighting cues and how we would actually, like, we came in with flashlights, and there were ways that we would light our faces. We had blood effects going on. And in some respects, I mean, the effects are even more important on the small screen here than they are on stage, because you're so close to people. If you're doing something funny or the blood doesn't look right, they know it, and it's incredibly distracting. So the number of like tech rehearsals that we had to work certain elements, I mean, the way in which you have to rehearse certain things, like, oh, if my character is supposed to hand something to your character, well, you need to be reaching up, and then you pull back, and there are standards that are being developed, and it's just fascinating to see. Like, every time I do another Zoom performance, there's something else that's been figured out, and there's like a certain way that you're doing it. It's just really cool to be a part of this learning curve.
Yes, it certainly, my feeling is that wherever we are in another year, whenever we come out of this, there's going to be another form of performance which will have been established, that you won't be theatre, won't be television. It'll be whatever has been developed out of that, which will then be available. So there's an advantage there. And Katie, are you actively looking for online roles now? Are you looking for anything that is being advertised or through contacts, for anything that you can get involved in?
Yeah, I think like Actors Access is kind of like one of the big websites that you go to, like, I'm an actor, hire me. Do you have a job? So I scroll through those. I have been seeing a lot more things that are like online based. I did one audition that was like for like a Zoom telemed kind of thing. I had another one that was like, again, it was intentionally like you were a person at home on a Zoom camera.
Yes.
So it was really interesting of like, again, like how things change like that. And you even see it like in commercials now. It's like they start out like, now more important than ever in these unprecedented times. It's like the culture. It's interesting how our culture responds to these huge shifts in our consciousnesses like so quickly. And one of those in being like, okay, what am I going to do to adapt? Was like you were saying, is I'm going to make this whole new weird thing that isn't theater. It doesn't have to be theater. It's okay that it's not theater, but it's something like totally new. So yeah, I have been seeing that on some more like mainstream casting calls and that kind of thing.
Yes, I mean, one thing which I've noticed is a lot more access to celebrities who are playing versions of themselves. I mean, Michael Sheen, for example, he's over the summer did a series with David Tennant, which was Zoom based, and they were just two pals. They played themselves. There were two pals who were trying to stage a play, and they were extreme versions of themselves. It's very, if you haven't seen it, it's very funny. It's called Staged, and it's available on Hulu now, I think. And they got bunches of guest stars in to be on a Zoom session with them. Samuel L. Jackson was on one of them, and various people who come in and out from time to time. But there seems to have been a bit of a rash of those kind of things, where you're getting to know some more well-known actors, because just like everybody else, they want to do stuff. We're no different. We're no different to them. Ridiculously less talented than them. I speak for myself, of course. But we're no different from them. We all want to create, and we all want to perform, and we all want to show off, and get the work done. We're just about at the end of the show. It's been again fascinating. We're hearing how things have developed from the dark days when everything shut down and everybody thought the world was coming to an end, through all the fumbling around to find your way and be creative and stay occupied, to now, I think, some form of normalization, where, as we've heard, we're not coming out of this anytime soon. So there are opportunities and there are ways of moving forward that are being developed. And it sounds like certainly everybody on this call is right in the middle of that now. Either by necessity or by the fact that's the way the part of the industry is working. You're all smack in the middle of the start of a whole new world for performance. So I'm just going to say thank you to everybody who has joined us on this call, to our guests, and to everybody who's watching online live and when we release the recording. The full recording of this will be made available on Facebook probably sometime tomorrow, but this one will be up for the time being. So it only leaves me to say goodbye. So I'm going to say to Robin, say good night, Robin.
Good night, Robin.
Hey, got his line right tonight. Fantastic. Hey. Yes, thank you very much for joining us, and join us next week, same time, for another Keep the Ghost Light On with some wonderful guests. And take care, keep safe, and wear the mask. Okay.
Keep safe.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.